All right, let's get this deep dive started. We're taking a look at The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
Yeah, Rick Rubin. That Rick Rubin.
Exactly, legendary music producer. But
He's kind of gone beyond music with this book.
this is more than music. This is a guidebook for creativity in like any field.
Yeah, any field. And we're going to pull out the good stuff, the stuff that's really going to help people listening put these ideas into practice.
You know, one thing that's really cool about this book is that Rubin emphasizes that like we all have this creative potential, right? It's not about being like a capital A artist, you know?
Right.
It's about approaching life with a fresh perspective.
Approaching life like we're all artists in our own way.
In our own way, exactly.
So instead of thinking, am I creative? It's more like,
How am I creative?
how am I already creative, even if I don't realize it?
Yeah, I love that he talks about how we all perceive the world, we filter information, and we create experiences, not just for ourselves,
Yeah.
but for others too. And just being aware of that process is like such a big step towards unlocking that creative potential that we all have.
I think that's true.
You know, we're constantly making choices, curating our own lives.
Yeah.
Like what music we listen to, how we decorate our homes, even what stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly.
It's all creative.
It is. He calls it living as an artist,
Okay, I like that.
and gives a few kind of surprisingly down-to-earth examples.
Like what? What's a good example?
Like a Philadelphia cheesesteak.
A cheesesteak. Okay, how is that art?
Well, he talks about the intention and the craft behind it.
Okay.
Someone carefully selected the ingredients, combined them in a specific way, and, presented them with a certain aesthetic.
Okay, yeah.
It's about appreciating the artistry in everyday life.
Right.
Expanding our definition of what art can be.
So we don't have to be like in a fancy gallery to experience art. It's all around
If we
us.
had to look, right?
If we know how to look, yeah.
It's a mindset shift, and Rubin says a big part of that shift is tapping into a childlike sense of wonder.
Ooh, yeah, that childlike.
Yeah.
Like when we were kids, finger painting, building forts.
Yeah.
But how do we bring that back as adults?
Well, think about how kids approach things. They're naturally curious.
Yeah.
They're fearless, not afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And Rubin believes we can reawaken that in ourselves by embracing spontaneity, by valuing play, and by, letting go of that inner critic that's always judging us.
Oh, yeah, that inner critic, I can hear that voice sometimes.
It can be so loud.
It can be so loud, and it can really hold you back.
It can.
So it's about quieting that voice and just letting ourselves experiment, have fun with the process.
That's it, finding that balance between what he calls the work of doing, which is the actual creating, and then the work of being, which is cultivating that open, receptive mindset.
I love that, the work of being.
Yeah.
Okay, but even with a playful mindset, ideas don't just magically appear.
Yeah, where do they come from?
Right. Yeah, where do they come from?
So this is where Rubin introduces the concept of the source. Imagine this universal wellspring of creative energy
Okay.
that surrounds us.
So it's not about like forcing ourselves to come up with ideas, but it's more about tapping into something bigger than ourselves.
Yes, it's about becoming a conduit, allowing that creative energy to flow through us.
I like that.
He even suggests techniques like dream journaling and embracing randomness to connect with this source.
Okay, dream journaling. What is that? Just like writing down your dreams when you wake up.
That's it. It's about capturing those fleeting images and feelings you have before they disappear.
Right.
It's a way of tapping into our subconscious, which is just a gold mine of creative material.
Okay, and what about embracing randomness?
It might sound strange, but, think about times when you've had like a brilliant idea pop into your head while you were doing something completely unrelated.
Oh, yeah.
Like taking a shower or going for a walk.
Like when you're not even thinking about it, it just hits you.
You stop trying so hard and then the ideas come, right?
So like that.
That's what Rubin's getting at.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of control, being open to the unexpected. He even suggests techniques like, throwing the I Ching or using other forms of divination to tap into this larger intelligence.
Okay, so it's not about forcing creativity, but more about creating the right conditions for it to just emerge organically.
That's the shift.
That's the shift. Okay.
It's a subtle but powerful shift.
Okay, but what about those times when we hit a creative block? Everyone's been there. It's like the well runs dry.
We've all been there. Rubin has some surprisingly effective strategies for that, too.
Okay, like what?
One is, he calls it distraction as a tool.
Distraction as a tool. Wait a minute. Shouldn't we be focusing harder when we're stuck?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But Rubin suggests that sometimes stepping away from whatever it is you're working on,
Right.
engaging in some other activity that lets your mind wander, like,
Yeah.
a walk in nature, can actually create space for those aha moments to happen.
It's like letting your subconscious work on the problem in the background.
Exactly. He gives examples of musicians who find melodies while they're driving.
Oh, yeah.
Their conscious mind is occupied, so the creative part can do its thing.
So instead of banging your head against the wall, you can actually step away and let the solution come to you.
Sometimes that's the best thing.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay.
There's another technique, too. He calls it make it up.
Make it up. Okay.
It's all about playfulness and experimentation.
So like if you're writing a song, you hit a wall,
Yeah.
you just start messing around on the piano and see what happens.
That's it. It's about lowering the stakes.
Right.
Forgetting about creating a masterpiece and just playing with possibilities,
Yeah.
He suggests setting intentionally low stakes just to take the pressure off.
It's like giving yourself permission to be bad,
Yeah.
to make mistakes.
You have fun.
Yeah, to have fun.
When we take the pressure off, amazing things can happen.
That's true. This is all so insightful.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to come in the next parts of this deep dive.
Yeah, we're going to get into even more specific exercises and techniques to, cultivate awareness, trust your intuition, and overcome creative blocks.
I think that's what people really want,
That's what it's all about.
putting this stuff into practice.
Awesome. Can't wait. So last time we were talking about those aha moments. How sometimes the best ideas come when you least expect them.
Yeah, that's a key point from Rubin's book.
Okay.
It ties into what he calls submerge.
Emerge.
Instead of trying to force creativity, it's more about immersing ourselves in the world of great art, literature, even nature.
So like soaking up inspiration almost by osmosis.
Exactly, yeah. Even if your goal is to make a quick snack,
Yeah.
you'll probably do a better job if you've tasted gourmet food before, right?
Okay.
You'll have a better understanding of what makes food truly delicious.
I get it. So our creative taste buds need to be educated too. By experiencing great art, we develop a deeper understanding of what makes something truly exceptional.
Yeah, whether it's reading a classic novel, watching a masterpiece film, listening to a symphony, it's all about expanding our perception and refining our taste.
But it's not about copying those works.
No, it's more about absorbing their essence, understanding what makes them so impactful, and letting that inform our own creative process.
Right.
Rubin even suggests creating a museum of your mind
Ooh, a museum of the mind.
filled with works that resonate with you.
I love that. So it's like our own personal collection of inspiration drawn from everything we've experienced.
That's it.
Okay.
And, while it's important to look outward for inspiration, Rubin also emphasizes the importance of looking inward.
Looking inward, so it's not just about what we consume, but also about exploring our own inner world.
That's right. He argues that our inner world is just as rich and fascinating as the world around us.
Yeah.
And that exploring our thoughts, our emotions, our dreams can be such a potent source of inspiration.
Okay, but how do we do that? I mean, how do we actually access those hidden depths?
Well, we already touched on one technique,
Okay.
dream journaling.
Right, dream journaling.
It's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this idea. What are some tips for getting started with that?
Keep a notebook by your bed, and as
Okay.
soon as you wake up, just jot down any dream fragments you can remember. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not.
Okay.
Just capture the images, the feelings, the symbols.
And if we do this consistently, we can start to uncover recurring themes, patterns, symbols that can actually inform our creative work.
Yes, it's like getting to know your subconscious self, which often holds the keys to our most authentic creativity.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, but sometimes, even with all the inspiration in the world, we get stuck.
Yeah, it's those creative blocks.
So what about those times when we hit a creative block?
The dreaded creative block. Well, besides that distraction as a tool technique we talked about,
Right.
Rubin emphasizes the importance of cultivating what he calls a beginner's mind.
Beginner's mind. So approaching our work with a fresh perspective, like we're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, like we've never done it before.
Right.
It's about letting go of our preconceptions, our assumptions, our habitual ways of thinking, and approaching things with that sense of curiosity and openness,
It's like that saying, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few.
That's a good one.
Right.
Yeah, and Rubin actually, he tells a fascinating story about AlphaGo. Have you heard of it?
It rings a bell.
So it's this AI program
Okay.
that learned to play Go, this ancient and incredibly complex board game.
Okay, yeah.
And what's so special about AlphaGo is
Yeah.
it wasn't taught by humans.
Okay.
It learned by playing against itself millions and millions of times.
Wow.
So it wasn't limited by any of the traditional rules or strategies,
It was approaching the game with a completely fresh perspective.
A true beginner's mind.
Right.
And what happened was incredible.
Happen. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So in one of the matches against a human grandmaster,
Okay.
AlphaGo made this completely unorthodox move.
Okay.
Something no human player had ever done before
Wow.
in the thousands of years that Go has been played.
So the AI program, unburdened by tradition, was able to see possibilities that humans had missed.
That's exactly it. And ultimately, AlphaGo won that game.
Right.
And the tournament,
It's like a real-life example of the power of beginner's mind.
that's what he's getting at.
Wow. So how can we, as human artists, cultivate that same kind of fresh perspective?
Well, Rubin suggests approaching our work as if we've never done it before.
Right.
Question everything, experiment, and be willing to make those mistakes.
So it's about challenging those ingrained assumptions, those habits that might be holding us back.
Yeah, and sometimes those limitations can actually boost our creativity.
Wait a minute, didn't we just talk about letting go of limitations and embracing a playful approach? Now we're saying limitations are good.
It's not a contradiction, actually. It's about finding that balance,
Right.
Rubin talks about how setting temporary rules, self-imposed limitations can actually spark innovation.
It's like giving ourselves a creative challenge.
Exactly. He gives some great examples.
Like what?
Have you ever heard of Georges Perec?
Vaguely.
He was a French writer, and he wrote an entire novel without using the letter E.
Wow.
It was a massive undertaking, but the constraint forced him to be so creative with language.
Yeah, that's dedication.
And it's a great example of how limitations can lead to those unexpected breakthroughs.
Totally.
He also talks about Yves Klein, a painter who limited himself to just one color,
Okay.
this vibrant shade of blue that became known as International Klein Blue.
Really?
And then there's Lars von Trier, a filmmaker, who created this set of rules called Dogme 95 that restricted things like special effects and artificial lighting and non-diegetic sound.
So these artists were intentionally putting themselves in a box, and that actually helped them think outside the box.
That's it. By limiting their options, they force themselves to find new and innovative solutions.
It's a fascinating paradox, and it seems like it could be such a valuable tool for any artist, regardless of their medium.
Absolutely. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some practical ways to incorporate this idea of rules into our own creative process.
Okay, clear.
We'll also be discussing the importance of collaboration, how to navigate those final stages of completion and release,
Right.
and how to cultivate that deeper understanding of the essence of our work.
Sounds good. I'm already feeling inspired to experiment with some of these ideas. So welcome back to our deep dive into Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. We've talked about finding inspiration, getting over those creative blocks.
Right, all that good stuff.
But in this final part, I kind of want to explore, what happens when you actually made something?
Yeah.
How do you collaborate? How do you finish strong? And then how do you actually let go of the work and release it out into the world?
It's funny. We talk a lot about, finding inspiration and getting over those blocks, but, those later stages of the creative process,
Right.
they can be just as challenging.
Oh, absolutely.
If not more so.
It's like you've climbed the mountain, now you got to figure out how to get back down safely.
Exactly. And Rubin, he offers some really good, insightful guidance for how to navigate those, some kind of tricky waters.
Yeah.
One of the things he really emphasizes is the importance of what he calls non-competition.
Non-competition, okay.
Yeah, so it's not about, comparing ourselves to other artists or trying to outdo them.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in that trap.
Oh, especially these days,
Yeah, with social media and everything.
It's like everywhere.
But Rubin argues that comparison is ultimately a distraction.
Right.
It can even be detrimental to the creative process.
Because it takes you out of that present moment and puts you in this ego-driven, striving kind of mode.
It shifts our focus away from the pure joy of creating and into this anxiety-ridden space of, am I good enough? Or, is this better than what someone else is doing?
Yeah, and that's usually not going to lead to your best work, right?
No, the pressure to be the best can really just stifle creativity.
Likely, yeah.
And Rubin reminds us that, every artist is on their own unique journey.
Right.
It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about expressing our own authentic voice, our own unique vision.
Right, but how do you quiet that competitive voice? What if you're just surrounded by other amazing artists? It's hard not to compare.
No,
Right.
it is. It is.
So what do you do?
One thing Rubin suggests is focusing on what he calls the essence of your work.
The essence one.
He talks about how, every piece of art has this core essence,
Right.
a kind of, underlying spirit or truth that gives it life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do you tap into that essence? How do you identify it? And then how do you bring it forth in your work?
One way is just to, ask yourself, like, what is this work really about? What is its core message or feeling?
Okay.
And then once you've identified that essence,
right.
strip away anything that doesn't serve it.
Okay, so it's like distilling the work down to its purest form.
Exactly.
To its most essential elements.
It often means letting go of things that we might be attached to.
Oh, yeah, like those little flourishes, stylistic choices.
Right, sometimes even whole sections of the work.
It's hard to kill your darlings, as they say. But you're saying this kind of like ruthless editing.
Mm-hmm.
It can actually strengthen the work.
It can. It allows that core essence to shine through, uncluttered by anything extraneous.
Right.
Rubin even suggests doing what he calls a brutal edit, where you intentionally cut the work back to the bare minimum just to see what's truly essential.
Ooh, that's a little scary.
It can be a very revealing exercise.
But I can see how it would really force you to confront, like, what's at the heart of the work.
Yeah, and often what we find is that the work is actually stronger in its simplest form.
Yeah, less is more. But isn't there a danger in oversimplifying things?
There's always a balance, but, Rubin reminds us that the creative process is rarely a solitary endeavor, right?
Yeah.
Collaboration can play a huge role in helping us refine and shape our work.
Because sometimes you need that outside perspective, those fresh eyes, to see the things you might have missed.
Exactly. And Rubin, he devotes a whole chapter to collaboration.
Right.
Emphasizing how working with others can just enrich and expand our creative possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, it can be so inspiring to bounce ideas off other people, get feedback, get support,
There we can.
But collaboration can also be really tricky. So how do you make sure it's a positive and productive experience for everyone involved?
Well, Rubin, he talks about collaboration as a form of cooperation.
Okay.
Where the goal isn't to compete or impose our own ideas, but to really work together to find the best possible expression of a shared vision.
So it's more about listening, being open to different perspectives, and finding that creative synergy.
Exactly. And he offers some really practical tips for successful collaboration.
Like what?
For example, clear communication is key.
Of course. Yeah.
It's also important to, set aside our attachment to specific outcomes.
Okay.
And be willing to experiment and play together.
Yeah, collaboration shouldn't feel like a battle of egos. It should be about coming together to create something greater than any one person could achieve alone.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so once we've, collaborated, we've edited, we've refined our work, we get to this final stage, release. This is where we let go, we send it out into the world, and we allow it to have its own life.
And that can be the most terrifying part.
Yeah, I think for a lot of artists, myself included, you've poured your heart and soul into something, and now you're putting it out there for everyone to judge.
It's vulnerable, it is, but Rubin reminds us that, holding on to the work too tightly can actually stifle its potential.
Right.
He talks about the dangers of perfectionism.
Oh, yeah.
And how it can prevent us from ever, truly completing or sharing our work.
Yeah, you're so afraid of making a mistake or being judged.
Yeah.
You just end up paralyzing yourself.
And he emphasizes that, the work is never truly finished. It's just abandoned.
Right.
There's always something we could tweak or improve, but at some point, we got to let go.
It's about finding that balance, right?
It is.
Between striving for excellence and accepting that, good enough is sometimes good enough.
It's about trusting the process and remembering that the work is ultimately a gift.
A gift.
Both to ourselves and to the world.
I like that. It kind of shifts the focus away from external validation and back to, the intrinsic rewards of the creative act itself.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages of Rubin's book.
Yeah.
He reminds us that creativity is not about achieving some external goal.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey, the process of discovery, the joy of bringing something new and beautiful into the world.
And in that sense, we're all artists, we're all creators, we're all participants in this ongoing symphony of creation.
Absolutely. Whether we're composing music, writing books, designing buildings, or simply making a meal, We're all tapping into that universal source of creativity that Rick Rubin so eloquently describes.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the creative act. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling really inspired to go out there and create.
I am too. And remember, you don't need permission to be creative.
Right.
The source is always there, waiting to be tapped. It's up to us to tune in, to listen, and to create.
That's it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.